Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to get your attention, and attention is what they do in the military. This morning, you were at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base, or former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. We'll find out which. My name is Bob Venne. Our program is What's Going On Here? Hometown Cable, Calvin Castine with the camera. And this smiling gentleman right here is...
Sergeant Peter Garnett.
All right. And he is the historian. You saw his picture in the paper a couple of weeks ago. First time I seen knew that they had a historian here, Peter.
Yeah.
We'll get a little bit more information about that. Before we go out, we're in his office. We wanted to give you one overall view of the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Kind of explain what we're looking at here, Peter.
Okay. Right here is Route 9. Okay. This, of course, is the new base, the operational side, and then you have over here, you have the old base, and Lake Champlain's right here. Here we have our runway. It's about 2 miles, a little over 2 miles long, and all the maintenance complexes out here, of course, are closed now, but this is where we did all our maintenance on aircraft and whatnot. This was our enlisted housing when we were open, and then over on the old base, we had our officers' quarters, our officer housing.
North is in this direction.
North is that way, yes.
So it's a little different. You'd have to turn this on its side. Right. And this is the layout of the old base, and we are in what building right now?
We are...
About in here?
426. Let me get my bearings right here. We're right here.
We're on that side. Okay, yeah. Right over there. And we're going to go outside. We're going to be here whatever time it takes, and we're going to find out the history of this place, and then and see some of the artifacts he has, and talks that it was the college when I was here at the college, and the 26th Infantry, just all kinds of things. And we'll be talking to Peter. And Peter, I heard you're not a stranger here. You live in Chazy, New York.
I live in Chazy. Yeah. Yeah. I've been here 9 years. I've been stationed at Plattsburgh, and I have a home up in Chazy. My wife Denise, formerly Denise Colomb. We have a son Peter, and another child on the way.
So
yeah.
Okay, we'll find out a little bit more about it.
Busy.
If he moves out of the way, we can see them.
Yes, you can move out of the way. Look there. There's Denise.
Some smiling pictures.
And there's the baby. Yeah. Young Peter, you said?
Yep, Peter Clyde.
Okay, Peter Clyde, and you are Peter...
Peter John.
Oh, yeah. There's a man in town named Clyde.
Yes, there is.
Huh?
Well, Peter Clyde was named after myself and Denise's dad.
Okay. We'll be right back. We're going to go outside. A beautiful day in the fall. It's the 12th, I guess, of October. And the sun is out. We're going to be into the 70s, so we should have a good time.
Yeah, we're going back in the spring instead of winter.
You got at least an hour?
I think I have at least an hour.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in to Hometown Cable. We'll be right back. A lovely day to be outside. This is my kind of summer right now, Peter.
Yes, it is.
All right, we are in the area where they had the closing ceremonies the other day. Is that correct?
Yes, you are.
All right, go ahead.
Right here is where we actually had the ceremonies, and it's kind of a little bit of ironic that we're going to start this off, our tour of the base, at where the base really ended. But as you're looking out right here, you're looking at the oval. That's the parade grounds of Plattsburgh Air Force Base. And there's it's not the wing flag anymore. It's not the base flag, but it's the community's flag now. But that's where our flag stood, or flew.
Right. It's important, people, to know that this part of the base that you see right here is the original, and it's been here for over 100 years, just the way it is.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And that parade ground had the 26th Infantry and some of the Navy and all the others over the years have been doing their calisthenics and so forth right out in front. All right.
Right here we have Building 100, and I'm going to refer to our walking tour guide.
Go right ahead.
Because it's really hard to memorize.
And it's authentic. Okay.
It is authentic. This was the regimental headquarters. The building was built in 1893. It also was used as a hospital and a mess hall over the years. At the end, the 380th support group stayed there and operated out of there. We had our public affairs office. My own office was there at one time. Quality, our legal offices were here. It's a beautiful building. There's a marble plaque in the entranceway that commemorates the men of the 21st Infantry that were killed in Cuba during the Spanish-American War. But that's quite an old building there, and that's Building 100.
Yeah. Look at the architecture on that. You look at those windows, the curved windows. Just a beautiful building. When the college was here, it was also an administration building for the college. Provost was there and so forth. The head of our college was there.
Yeah.
And all these buildings, well, practically all. Some of them are new. I'm not sure that fire department was there at the time or not.
Your buildings right around the oval right here are all fairly old. There's a few that were built in the early 1900s.
Wasn't there another one here maybe torn down?
Not to
Not
my
to your
knowledge.
knowledge? I thought there might another. All right, let's say here while we're right here, the fire department is right there.
That's our old base fire station right there. We have 2 fire stations on base. Well, one on the new side over by the runway, and then we have our fire station here.
Now, the fire station, that was also in the paper recently. They said that they're trying to give a contract to the city or something for here?
Right. Well, of course, you know, you need fire protection. So the city, now this is what I believe. I'm not real positive on this, but the city was, the city didn't feel that they could swing the fire protection. So same thing with the security. We have, they've contracted a local security company to secure the area. And it's going to be the same thing with fire protection. Groundskeep, everything, the whole 9 yards.
Are the apartments all empty now?
Yes. All the housing, the base housing, is empty.
They are empty.
We have a few apartments and a few houses, down on this side of the oval that are still occupied, but they'll be empty within a week.
Okay, let's look at the great big building here to the left. What was that used for? Or that part of your, or you do your tour?
That was that's building 104, and that at one time was the enlisted men's barracks. It was one of 3 barracks built in 1893, and it would hold 1 infantry battalion of 4 companies, totaling about 320 men. This is what gave Plattsburgh really its name, Plattsburgh Barracks. In 1960, it was spelled without the H, Plattsburgh.
Right, URG.
Yeah, and then they added the H in the 60s to conform with the city spelling of Plattsburgh. The building was remodeled in 1981, and before we closed, I hate to say keep using this, but before we closed, it was our finance office, traffic management office, airline tickets, all those kind of operations went into there, and our contracting office was housed in that building. But again, a huge building and very old.
It was dormitories when the college was here. Champlain College opened, I think, about 1947. I was in the service at the time. I got out in 1948, came to school here in the fall of 48, and graduated February the 12th, 1952 from Champlain College. It was a 4-year college. It used to be a 2-year. It was one of 4 colleges built to take the military back from the World War II, and it was one of the sister colleges, became part of the State University of New York, and I graduated with a BA in LA, it was called, and the first graduating class here, and one of the last ones too, because I think the last one was 54.
It was very short. Yes,
very, very short.
It was mainly put here because to give the GIs an education after the war, and that was its whole purpose. And then, like you said, it became part of the state institution, but it was very, very short-lived.
Right, they had about 2,000, 2,500 students, I recall, and it has nothing to do with the Champlain College you now hear about with the great basketball team over in Vermont. That was another operation completely. Nothing to do with this college. It was not moved over there or anything like that, Peter. All right, before we go any further down the road here, tell us a little bit about Peter. Where were you from? You say you live in Shazy, but where were you from originally?
I'm originally from Wappingers Falls, New York. It's just a little south of Poughkeepsie, New York.
So
I'm a New Yorker. Again, I've been here for 9 years. I've been stationed at Plattsburgh. This is going to be my 13th year in the military, and I'm separating, voluntarily separating. My wife has a hair salon, Hairstyles Unlimited. I have my own computer business, Answers Computer Service, and we also have a lawn care business, We Care Lawn Care. So we have our fingers into quite a bit of little enterprises that are doing very well, and we decided instead of me continuing on, and it was a big decision.
I'm sure.
Whether stay in the military or.
But had they not closed the base, or would you be getting out of the service, or would you have stayed for 20?
I would have stayed. Can't tell you if I would have stayed for 20 or not, because being in the military, you're also moved a lot. So
you don't want to move anymore.
I didn't want to move.
Your wife is from this area.
Wife's from Shazy.
Okay. So that's what you ended up. Shazy's a nice place to be.
Yes,
it's also got a lot of history, huh?
Yeah.
And if you like apples, it's nearly as good. It's better than Peru.
That's it. Yes, it is.
Well, but it's a good apple country. Your next tour, are we going to walk down, or
Sure.
We'll walk on down? You're watching Hometown Cable. Sergeant Staff Sergeant. Is that right? Staff Sergeant Peter
Garnet.
Garnet. I want to say Garnot, but it's Garnet.
That's okay.
We're at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base, and we're saying goodbye to the Plattsburgh Air Force Base and getting a little history of the facility. We're moving down to what used to be the main gate. This was the main gate. You came into base right here on U.S. Avenue. Peru, I guess that's Peru Street here. I forget. I guess that's U.S. Avenue.
U.S. Avenue, Route 9.
You get there, right. And then the Bronsons used to be across the street here. They had a bar and grill during the college time. And right behind it, what's the building behind us, Peter?
This is Building 108, and this was the Barracks gatehouse. As you said, it was the entrance to the base, to the barracks. It was built, jump around here a bit. Okay. It was built in 1893, and it was adjacent to the main gate. Now, we jumped around a bit, and we really didn't get to the reason why Plattsburgh Air Force Base, Plattsburgh Barracks, came about. Right after the Revolutionary War, with Lake Champlain being a very important water out there, the base housed three forts, Fort Brown, Fort Scott, and Fort Moreau, as I've been calling it a different name. And what they basically were, two of the forts were on the base as we know it today, and one was off at the Saranac, and they formed a triangle of course, protection. But that's the real reason why the importance of Plattsburgh Air Force Base, Plattsburgh Barracks, came about, is because of the importance of those three forts during the Revolutionary War.
Okay. And then the War of 1812, they were very active also.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have here, we have a history, and then I didn't hear they were unoccupied for a while.
During the period of the Mexican War.
Okay.
It was again occupied 1848 through 1861. Troops were quartered here at the time. They were moved to engage in the battle during the Civil War. And then in 1865, the Army again occupied Plattsburgh Barracks and maintained its presence through 1944. That's when pretty much all the construction you see, all these buildings were constructed during the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Okay. Now, the parade ground was leveled off here. It was leveled in 1892.
In 1892.
Okay. And then tell us about the, I can't even say that, the brickyard. The 21st Infantry was transferred.
That was the architecture of the bricks at the time.
Okay.
The parade ground was leveled off leveled off in 1892. Then these quarters, these officer quarters, as you're probably viewing, they were built about late 1800s again. And this, of course, this parade ground, this is called the U.S. Oval. And what it is, it's a big circle. You have, again, all your officers' quarters, and then we had administration buildings during the Air Force times.
Uh-huh.
Jumping back again, this history my office has put together, it's the history of the 380th Air Refueling Wing and Plattsburgh Air Force Base. It's like a two-part history. And I have, probably 300-400 copies available. If anyone's interested, you can contact me, and I can get you a copy out.
How would they contact? What would they use for a mailing address?
Well, my office has changed many times.
All right,
and
so you better check it.
I don't even have my new office number memorized, but you can call me at my new office, and it's 562-9879. Again, it's 562-9879, and I'd be more than happy to get you a copy out.
Okay, and if they wanted to write to you, could they write to you here? You still
Yeah,
getting
they
mail?
can. They can write to me at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. We still have the zip code 12903. The community's trying to keep that zip code now presently for the park folks.
So if you can't remember Peter Garnett's name, you could say the historian.
Yep, the Plattsburgh historian.
Plattsburgh historian, Plattsburgh Air Force Base, and he'll get you out one of these, the history of the 380th Refueling Wing. And it also is the history of the base itself.
Right.
And that's why we're referring to it, because we've got so many dates, and we don't want to misquote, so that's why he's referring to these.
Lots of information in there.
I can't help but notice this very unusual white post here. What is that, Peter?
Well, let's go take a look at it.
Okay, we're going to get up closer. Well, we talked about the pole, we got up closer. Tell us what this is.
And this is actually the original flagpole of Plattsburgh Barracks. I don't know if you can read the sign or not, but it was erected by a one-armed Joe Forkey under the direction of Colonel Horace Jewlett of the 21st Infantry. He was the commander. And it was erected, the flagpole was used from 1894 to 1964. And that's the remains, the base of it.
Right at this location, right here. Right this spot.
And this is actually, this in those days, this was the entrance to the barracks.
Yeah.
You had, of course, your entry, your main gate entry right here. And as soon as you drove on or horse and buggied on, whatever it may have been, this would be the first thing you'd see.
Right. You see, you had the driveway, and you had the gates for entering and leaving.
And right there, those cylinders there, that's actually the entry, as you know.
Yep. I'm not sure I mentioned, but the building on the left at 108 was the cafeteria and the student union when the college was here. And just off to the right were some student housing, but a married student housing. And my sister and brother-in-law lived in this housing right there, that one-story building, on the far side to the right, on the street side. And I've stayed overnight there a couple times. I guess they had 2 or 3 rooms. Slept on the couch, and I remember one night, particularly 20 and 30 below zero, we'd get up every 2 hours to start our car, let it run so it would start in the morning. We did that all night long, and then in the morning it wouldn't start, we'd run the batteries down. But my oldest nephew was born here in Plattsburgh and was here a year.
Yeah.
And then the others were, some of the teachers lived in the better, the officer housing.
Right.
Okay.
Those now, well, when the base ended, of course, those buildings all were our commanding officer buildings. The last very far one was the actual wing commander's building, and these housed our group commanders and our squadron commanders, all these houses. And they're 2 family homes. They're 2 family homes. 3 floors, beautiful
Beautiful
inside.
homes, beautiful homes.
Beautiful.
And now, the military, when you were here in the Air Force, did you use this as a parade ground too?
Oh yeah.
Regularly marching? Did you march much in the Air Force?
Yes, during ceremonies, of course. We had lots of different retirement ceremonies and inactivation and activation, all different sorts. And this, of course, is where every year we'd have our fireworks display right out here.
And sports teams played out here too, right?
Right.
You had your soccer. They used to have a baseball diamond here. The whole works right
Running
here.
track. There's a lot of activity. This was really the center of the base right here.
All right, Peter, where do you go from here now in your tour? Any of these buildings? Can we go in any of those buildings?
Unfortunately not.
We can't go in a
They're,
building.
Most
Okay.
of them are as we call pickled. They're closed off.
Okay.
Their pipes are drained, and they're all they're mothballed, as we say.
Well, I like the word pickled better.
Pickled, yeah.
Oh, they're pickled, huh?
We might want to take a walk down to, again, we can see the regiment commanders, our wing commanders' home, and also we have our old base chapel down here.
That's open?
No, that's also
pickled.
That's also closed.
Okay.
We can get a beautiful picture of it today, that's for sure.
Okay. We'll be right back. Calvin is scanning down from that one-story building some of the 2-story, 2-family homes as you go by. You see 3 stories. They shared it left and right.
Right.
Any idea how many rooms in a house like that?
I think 5 bedrooms, 5 to 6 bedrooms, but they are 3-story. Even the 3rd floor has living space.
Yeah.
These buildings were built between 1893 and 1897. And some of America's greatest military leaders lived here. Douglas MacArthur, Leonard Wood, George Marshall, Mark Clark, and Teddy Roosevelt.
They were here. I never
All
knew
different
that.
times they were.
I
they
did
lived in
not
these
know that.
quarters.
Now you can see the metal fire stairs coming off the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, right on down. And these have the 4 windows, and you say they have changed some because there have been some fires. And if you look over here with the Mayflower truck, and that's very, very sad to see, they're still moving out. That building's a little bit different. Doesn't have the dormers.
Right. My guess is that is probably one of the buildings that was plagued with fire. A lot of our historical buildings had fires in the 1900s, late 1800s. A lot of them did. You didn't have the protection like you do today.
You'll notice only 2 windows in the 4th floor, 3rd floor instead of 4. And over the porch, only 1 window instead of 2. So it's the same house, basically.
You can even see that the brick looks
newer. Yes, it does. And then we go back to the others on the other side again.
And of course, we have our Mayflower truck out there moving. I think that's Major Williams' home. That's he was the civil engineer squadron commander, and he's one of the last to leave.
Why would some officers be on the old base and some on the new base? Was there a reason?
No, all your officers lived on, well, you had your segregation. You had enlisted on your new base, and then you had your officers.
All the officers were on the old
base.
base.
That's just military
Okay.
tradition.
So what, the officers were all over here, not on the other base at all?
Officers all lived over here.
Right. Are you out of the service yet? Not yet.
Yep, that's why I'm in this uniform.
That's why you're in it. I thought you just liked it. That's all.
November 10th is my last duty day.
Your last day is November. Okay. Right on down again. You see a bandstand. They've had with the clump of trees.
Yeah, that's our gazebo.
Okay, there's another shot, Calvin. I guess if you could get it across to show the big barracks over here on the left. And the next building was a very important building. You want to tell us about that big building now? Can you?
Okay. Yeah, I sure can. That was the bachelor officers' quarters, and it was a mess hall. A lot of the unmarried officers lived on the second floor of that building.
The big long one?
Yeah. Big long one right over there.
Big long one.
Okay, we're focused again. Having trouble with the sun here. All right, that building is building what? The big one?
That's building 406.
Another
Key about that building is that the Plattsburgh idea, which was the forerunner of the ROTC, creating, educating young officers. That's where Plattsburgh idea was started right there. That's where it began, and that was one of the barracks. Over the years, that was one of the big uses of the barracks, was to have that Plattsburgh idea to educate. What it did, it created, God, I want to say like 21,000 officers in the early 1900s. But that's how Plattsburgh idea came about, and again, the forerunner of the ROTC program.
Okay, the next building to the right with the big chimney.
Yeah, that is that was our present day. That's a gymnasium, and I believe, as you said, it was a gymnasium back in the college days, too. It was erected in 1932. It was the largest building in the Plattsburgh area, and it was known as the Big Acre. This was the site of many boxing tournaments, the 26th Infantry, and other Army units in the Northeast. And then again, today, it was our gymnasium. It has a elevated aerial running track in it. Racquetball courts, tennis courts are outside. And as you're looking at it to the left, that little entryway, that was a physical fitness area, that was an addition.
The one to the very left?
Very left, the new part of the building.
Well, now, you know, that years ago, there was something there, but it was a theater.
Oh, okay.
That used to be the base theater, and during college time, they had musicals there. I don't know if they've done it over or whatever, but that was there. And you'd go downstairs in that area, down to the bowling alleys.
Okay, yeah.
And I used to set pins back then when I lived in Plattsburgh in about 1940. I set pins here. Of course, the barracks is better known, I think. They call it the barracks. We never call it the base. For the 26th Infantry, there were tons of people from the 26th Infantry, and many of them, when they were discharged, lived in Plattsburgh and stayed in Plattsburgh.
Right.
So a lot of the people in the Plattsburgh area have a lot to do with the 26th Infantry. Either their fathers or their grandfathers were here. And that I don't think that gym was as big then either, as I remember it, but we used to play there. We loved to come over here. Yeah. This is before the college. And they were very good to the people in the area. This was it was part of the community. It always has been. And of course, so was the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Sure. Very much part of the community. So it wasn't a military to us. It was a part of Plattsburgh, part of our county.
A lot of bases, a military person will go to a lot of bases, and I don't think you're going to find a warmer welcome than in the North Country at this base. You could really tell the difference. I was overseas for a number of years, and this was really my first stateside base, but you just, you were welcomed. You were open-armed at Plattsburgh.
Everyone always they've always had a military here, except for those 5 or 6 years of the college, Now, there's one house that's out of place there. Right behind those trees, just to the right of the gymnasium. What is that?
That's, and I'm going to read from my my walking tour here. That's the Post Sergeant Major's Quarters. That's Building 416. And what that is that's the Sergeant Major of the Infantry Regiment. He was the most prestigious position held by an enlisted man, and that was his single-family home right there.
And right behind there is the lake. See, the lake's right there. Lake's right out in the back of that. We'll see that a little bit later. And what a gorgeous day you picked out, Peter. How did you plan this?
You told me to pick a good day, and I just did as ordered.
He's still in the military. He does what he's asked. Okay, U.S. Air Force Base. There it is, right there. We were at Garnet, G-A-R-N-O-T. Smiling. Another month or so. Then you're going to get all that retirement money?
No retirement.
Oh, you can't? That's right. 13 years.
This is voluntarily separated.
Voluntarily separated. Then you're going to play with the computers.
I get a handshake.
We'll get into that a little bit later about your computers. Thanks for watching.
Gee, don't say that.
I've found myself some shade here under these beautiful trees on the north end of the oval, and Peter's going to tell us about the building directly across.
Yeah, the building we're looking at right in front of us here, that's the commander's officers' quarters, and that building was erected in 1895, and that would house the regiment commander and his family. And before our surmise there, it housed the 380th Air Refueling Wing Commander, Colonel Dawson, our last wing commander.
Now, when you say the wing commander, is he the #1 person on the base?
In 5-6 years ago, the Air Force kind of changed its system, its organization. And you used to have a wing commander and you used to have a base commander. The base commander was pretty much the caretaker of the base. And the wing commander, he was the commander of the operational side, the actual, let's fly airplanes, let's deploy to wherever. He was the commander of the troops in a sense. And again, the base commander was the groundsman. And then in the early 1990s, it changed, and we went to a wing commander, and then they went to group commanders, and the old base commander became the support group commander.
At the time you had both, the base and the wing commander. Was the wing commander subordinate to the base commander?
The other way around.
The other way around. The wing commander was in charge.
He was in charge.
Okay, now, there's one other thing very historic about these buildings that we didn't mention when we were down, because of the register. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The historical register, yes. Most of the buildings on this oval are enlisted or in the National Historical Register. And a few of them are actual historical buildings. The old stone barracks, which we'll see later on. But most of these buildings are in a sense protected by that register.
Which means you can't just change whenever you want to. It's got to be. You can't tear them down. You can't do certain things.
Anything that's done, any actual maintenance or any changes has to be approved by the federal government and the state government. Pretty much got to be blessed by God.
Okay, the big building here on the left. Now that's not just 2 apartments.
Nope, that used to be our base hotel, as you would call it. Present day, they're like a hotel for military people, either just coming onto base, just leaving base. They've left their house, they've closed up their house, and they come here for temporary living. And again, in the old days, these were all housing, barracks and housing for officers.
You can see they've replanted trees here in the middle of the oval as the others are dying off, and you can just imagine the amount of money and work it's going to take to keep these buildings and these grounds in the condition they are, and the big responsibility that the city of Plattsburgh is taking accepting these buildings. I looked in the history here because I wanted to tell you about the 26th Infantry. After First World War, the 26th Infantry Regiment of the Iron 1st Division was stationed at Plattsburgh Barracks. It remained there until the outbreak of World War II, when in 1942 it left Plattsburgh and began its long trek from the sands of Africa to the fields of Normandy. The unit fought in Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, acquiring outstanding honors for its service. And then a skeleton garrison was maintained at Plattsburgh until March 1941, when the 36th Combat Engineers arrived. And then it served as a training site from 42 to 43, and it was taken over by the Navy in 44.
1944.
So my history, and most of the people my age and a little bit older, if there are some that are older than me, would remember the 26th Infantry. After that, it was the college, and then the Plattsburgh Air Force Base for 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Navy had the barracks for a short time. In March of 1944, the Plattsburgh Barracks was renamed Camp McDonough, and it was used as an indoctrination station for naval officers. It graduated nearly 3,000 naval officers, and it was decommissioned as a naval training school on 1 January 1944, and then Camp McDonough reverted back to the U.S. Army. At that point, it was the base was used as a Army Air Force convalescent hospital, and it was very short. The Army had it as a hospital. And back at some of the buildings that we saw earlier, back by Building 100, and those buildings were the hospital buildings that were used. And what they did is they had some temporary, I want to say tunnels for just short of words, and they had these buildings were all connected by above ground tunnels, so that, our harsh winter months back here, people could travel from building to building very easily, with of course patients and whatnot. So they built these tunnels between the buildings as for protection.
And the bandstand right here to our left has been here for many years, or at least there was one. If this isn't the original, and a lot of military bands played here, and people were invited back in the early 40s, late 30s. I've been here several times. Didn't care quite so much for the music then. I came to run around and raise heck while the rest of them were listening to the music.
Yeah, every infantry regiment had a band, and there's where a lot of them played music.
The gazebo. You know where that was built? Does it say on your paper?
No. Well, this one actually, it stands right here, was is a new.
Okay.
Is a new one. The original bandstand, I don't really know why how it was destroyed or anything like that.
There was another entrance right here, by the way. There was a back. This was the other entrance to the base that's never been used. I don't think in the new, the Plattsburgh Air Force. That little road goes right on down and comes out just north of the cemetery across the road. You can see that gates down there when you're out in the South Peru Street.
Right. And another historical building that we'll be looking at probably next is the chapel, the old base chapel.
Right. So they didn't really build many new buildings to show newness around the oval.
Nope.
It's pretty well the way it has been. As you look way back, you can see way back to straight ahead, you see some buildings way back. Those were new. Those were barracks also.
Those are fairly new buildings. They were built for the Air Force, and they were again. That's part of the hotel, the Plattsburgh Hotel, our base hotel.
Yes.
And then you have some junior enlisted quarters that are fairly new quarters are behind these buildings that you can't really see.
One-story buildings.
One story. Yeah.
We're under the trees. Calvin has his back to the front of the chapel just behind him. And this is a commemorative of the old Fort Moreau.
This is one of the original forts, Fort Moreau, that was one of the highlights for the Revolutionary War. And this is where it actually stood. They've done some surveys, some aerial surveys and some infrared surveys the past few years to try to see if there's any foundation, anything that can be seen and hopefully used in the future for historical purposes. But unfortunately, nothing was recovered. Nothing was able to be picked up with the infrared satellites and whatnot that they used.
We're not sure you can read this. You want to read this to us, Peter?
Sure. On this spot stood Fort Moreau, an embankment which constituted the center and the key point of the American line of defense during the Battle of Plattsburgh, September 6th through 11th, 1814. It was made by the 6th and 29th Regiment of the Infantry under Colonel Smith. Can't pronounce that first name.
Okay, we're talking here 180 years ago, and it sounds like a long, long time, and it is, until you get in Europe when you're talking 400 and 500 years, but for the U.S., that's a long, long time right here.
We're a young country. We're only 300 years old.
Exactly. All right, anything else that we should see right here? Of course, there's the tennis courts. You can't miss those over to our right here, just north of that last building. And they had a great beach here too.
Yep, still have that.
Okay, maybe we'll get down there later on. We're walking toward the chapel, which has also been pickled, so we won't be able to get in. But been many a wedding here. Some non-military too.
Yep. Yes, a lot of people got married in this church, both military and non-military. Me and my wife got married in this church. This is the old base chapel. In 1933, the Church Women's League for Patriotic Services built this chapel.
43?
In 1933.
33.
Built the chapel for the people of Plattsburgh Barracks. It used bricks were specified in the contract so that the building would match the existing architecture of the post. The interior light fixtures, which unfortunately we can't see because again the building is closed, were fashioned by James McGunn in the post's wheelwright shop. The chapel again was used right up until the end for services, for special services, for quite a few marriages. It's a beautiful, beautiful church.
Very small inside, but all wood with beams across. And one of the fondest recollections I have here, I did a wedding, and when just before the ring ceremony, the best man passed out. He was so excited that he passed out, and when they went to get the ring, and he had to go in the back room and get it from him, he was lying down in the back room. This is a plaque, which you may want to read again, Peter.
Okay. The memorial chapel dedicated on 24 October 1933 in memory of those stationed here who gave their lives in World War I. The project was sponsored by the Church Women's League for the Patriotic Service, costing $22,472 to construct it. It was constructed of weathered brick from a historical structure near Plattsburgh, and again the chandeliers were made by the post's blacksmith. The pews and original organ were donated by the 26th Infantry. The bell installed in 1936 came from the USS O'Brien.
Oh, from a ship.
Yeah. Me and my wife and I were viewing our wedding video a couple months ago, and she said, you never realized that it was a military chapel, but in the video, of course, you saw a lot of U.S. flags, which you don't see in normal churches.
That's right. There were a lot of flags up there. And over here is another little plaque memorial we ought to mention. Prisoner of war missing in action. Recognition Day, September 19th, or 19th September 1986, we shall not forget.
Yes. Every year we would have our prisoner of war and missing in action ceremony, or mass at the base chapel, at the old base chapel, every year. And then in September 1986 they put this stone in place.
Something you'd expect to see at one of the Ivy League colleges. Look at the vines on the side of the church right up the steeple.
Beautiful color. Beautiful,
beautiful. Right here on the old Plattsburgh Air Force Base, the old barracks. And if you look down, Calvin will swing over to his left as he goes down. You can see the links down to where we started at the administration building, way down. And this is just so picturesque. It's what you would expect to see at a military post, but don't all the time.
No. Yes, again, it's unfortunate that we really don't know what the future lies.
No, but times change, Peter.
Yeah, the military's been back and forth on this piece of property for many years. It again, like we spoke about it, Army, Navy, Air Force. It's changed hands many times, and who knows what the future will lie.
And if it's a matter of whether we're going to keep it and have to worry about a war or not have it, and not worry about a war, I'll go for the latter any time.
Right.
Although we're going to miss in our midst the presence of these military people.
Well, we have what is known as it's known pretty much as the Atlantic Air Bridge, and what that is over the ocean. There's a few refueling tracks out there that are very important for, again, Operation Restore Hope and many of the operations that occurred the past few years. And not having a base up in the really true northeast, it's who's to say, you know, if anything does happen in the future, is there going to be a need for that air bridge again? So we'll just have to kind of wait and see.
It's not being torn down, it's just being deactivated. We're moving north. We want to orient you. You can see the back of the chapel just to the left or behind that great big tree. And then the officers' quarters on this side that were newer officers' quarters, built in the 50s, you think?
Right. All the buildings we're viewing now were built in the 50s and 60s. The Air Force, of course, put these up. They're all, a lot of them are officer, I don't want to say junior ranking officer, but mid-ranking officer quarters.
What does that mean? What rank would that be?
Captains, majors, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Maybe some lieutenant colonels.
All right. Over to our left here, to my left, is the visiting officers' quarters. What's that mean?
It's basically exactly how you put it. It's people that are visiting here. We had flight simulators here, tanker flight simulators, FB flight simulator, and those simulators were used not only by Plattsburgh air crews, but by, air crews from United Kingdom, England. They would come here and they would temporarily stay here, and this is one of the buildings they would stay in.
And over here it says UOQ, so that must mean the unlisted?
Well, that was unaccompanied.
Unaccompanied, okay. You mean this could be with somebody with them, you mean?
This was pretty much if they were here for a temporary stay. These buildings here were for single officers.
Okay. You know, you talk about the simulator. We were in the process of going to the simulator and getting a chance to see it one time, and it just kind of fell through, I guess, Cal? Yeah. It was in the process, but then didn't. While we're right here, looking between the 3-story, 2.5-story, you can see the roofs of some 1-story officers, junior officers.
Those are junior ranking officer quarters down there.
And beyond them is Route 9. You can see the vehicle back there. You can see a bus going by.
And beyond Route 9 is the Saranac River.
Right. It kind of gets wider here. The road is further away from the back of these buildings. And this road used to continue. I mean, if you follow right straight up, you'll come right out on Hamilton Street, I believe, or McDonough, right? McDonough.
McDonough, I think, yes.
And right over in that whole section where, just to the east of South Peru Street.
Right. Yeah, another one of our gates.
Right.
Gatehouses.
But that isn't used either, is it?
No, we used it temporarily a few times when there was road construction.
Okay. We're moving down here to show you what is probably the best known to people who come on the base, have probably been here more than any other building on the whole complex, because there were weddings here, parties, retirements, and so forth, and that's called the
officers. The officers. Yes, the officers club.
The officers club here, and if you were in customs or some of the other people, you could join the officers club and could come here to eat. And there were 2 big dining rooms here, large ones for parties, and that's it right up ahead. And I've parked in this parking lot more than once, and a lot of our customs people, because this was one place you could get to have a big party.
Yes.
It's tough to get a party of 250 people in the community anywhere.
Again, this is a fairly new building. It was erected by the Air Force, and a lot of people had their wedding receptions. A lot of parties went on there. That was the officers club. We have an enlisted club over on the new side of the Air Force base, and that was again just for the enlisted.
Well, we're right here. If you look right straight over that VW, Calvin, you can see the lake right there. That's what made this even more beautiful than just what you've seen so far. The lake adds so much.
Yep. And
straight ahead is the exit.
Right. That's the other gate.
Right on to McDonough. I believe it's McDonough Street. Down where Vin Jerry and MP Myers used to be, the railroad. It would right be at the end of this road if you continued. Right over onto Bridge Street. And again, over to the left, very few, but maybe 15 or 20 homes of the junior officers, 2 to a building.
Right, yeah. 2 families to a building. And I think out there only one of them is occupied by our civilian safety man. He's the person in charge of the base safety. And I think he's the only one living down there now. And he leaves next week.
He leaves next week.
Yeah.
I don't know if Calvin can see it from there, but if he just steps over here, you can see the steeple what I believe is the St. John's Church.
St. John's.
That's St. John's Catholic Church, as you can see. It looks close, but of course it's you go down to the corner of Broad and South Peru, turn across the bridge and up near Margaret, and that's the St. John's Church.
And to the left is, I think, the college, one of the college buildings.
You can see, yes, that's got to be the, straight ahead to your left over that red tree, Calvin. You see the 10-story administration buildings. You can see it sticking up in the air at the college. You're up kind of high right here, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
We're at a high point.
Yeah, we're on a plateau.
We're nearly across from the reserve building on South Peru Street if we were straight out here. And none of this end's going to be used at all, right? That's all closed up now, the officers' club?
Yeah, it's all closed. To my knowledge, I don't know of any plans yet. There's a lot of buildings on this base that, we have a dental clinic, we have a huge hospital, we have enlisted clubs, officers' clubs. There's a lot of buildings on this base that I don't know if the community really knows about them. There's probably a lot of buildings on this base that can be very useful to someone wanting to start a business.
Yes.
Of really any type. Garage station, daycare, you name it. The arts and crafts, there's buildings and equipment, and most of the buildings have all the equipment in them to start a business.
Now you take like the VFW building and the Knights of Columbus building down on not Beekman. I've lost my down in the north end.
Right.
If they didn't have their building, they could be in the market for a building like that. They got all the facilities they need, probably much more than they need, but yet, they put on big parties. It would be a great place.
Sure.
At this point, though, I was an article in a letter to the editor yesterday, I think, and it said they haven't heard anything at all. It's nice to talk about the history of the base, but what's going to happen, and nothing's being done that we know about.
I don't want to make it sound like an advertisement, but if there's someone looking to start an enterprise, talk to the park folks. Maybe they can help you out.
Here's something very unusual, Calvin, right here, a car coming in the base, which we haven't seen much of, and he's going to turn right down here. We've seen very few of them. That's the first car we've seen since we've been out here in 45 minutes. In what used to be a very, very active, this kind of puts it in perspective when you see it. You haven't seen a car.
Sure.
We've stopped in the shade here right next to this great big 4 front entrance building with backs to the lake. We've seen this from across the grinder here, we used to call it. And this is that ROTC building you mentioned?
Yeah, this was, when we were an operational base, this was used by the ROTC in the summertime. It was also our NCO, our non-commissioned officers education classes went on here. This originally was the enlisted man's barracks. This is building 406, and it was built in 1934. And it would house one infantry battalion of about 320 men. And again, this is where the Plattsburgh idea came about, the forerunner of the ROTC program as we know it today.
You know, as we look here, and you people who own houses know what we're talking about, you see how this up there needs some paint on the woodwork up above? Now that's going to cost some money. And that's got to be kept up, right?
Sure.
And you can see that the dormers need to paint a little bit, and they probably haven't done much in the past 2 years because it was closing. But that's something that's going to have to be taken care of before too long, and it's expense. There's a lot of expense. Millions to keep something like this up. The cement work right here on the going up to the front porch, you see, breaking because, but that'll have to be fixed, or it's going to break even more once the frost gets in there. You know what it is. Yep. I don't know if Wappinger Falls had this kind of weather. Did you have cold weather in Wappinger Falls?
Wappingers Falls, yes. Yeah, we had cold winters, a lot of snow in winters.
Where did they ever get the name of Wappingers Falls? Do you know?
The Indians.
Indians.
Wappingers Indians.
The Wappinger Indians. All right. You still have reservation or anything in that area? No.
No.
There's nothing there at all. No. Okay, and then as you look here, you should see there's the grinder, the parade ground right straight in front, and looking south. And not a cloud in the sky.
Beautiful fall day.
We're standing in front of the gymnasium, which is pickled also.
Yep.
And that's the theater building that with the 3 doors, and now it's used for something else, you said.
Yeah, there's
Had been.
racquetball courts, and we had our physical fitness training in there, our evaluations in there, present day, back before we closed. This building was built in 1932, and it was the gymnasium at the time also. There's you can see the elevated track. I think it was like
See the
an
rail.
8 mile.
Yep.
Yep, the rail
Yep.
around it.
I don't remember if the building came out that far before or not, because it looks like there's some new bricks and that, but there definitely was a theater back. That was a theater for the base. Seen quite a few movies in here. They used to open it up to people that come on. You know, we always knew somebody who was in the 26th anyway. And it wasn't very hard to get in with one of the students. When I left Plattsburgh, I was 14 years old, so in 42. So I'm giving my age away there, but I'm talking 39 to 42, just when the war started. I used to go over to the base, and I used to say I worked down in the basement here, setting up pins. I think they had 4 alleys. You know how many they got now?
None that are used. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd never been down in the basement. I'm told that there's some remains still down there, but I've never been down there.
Obviously, this wide expanse right here was not here either. All this parking lot, that was put in once the air base got here, because the baseball team, well, they used to play ball right here. The Champlain College baseball team played right here. I wasn't on that team, but I remember Harry Duckworth, the north end of the city. He and I were on the soccer team. We made the trips to Ithaca, and we played Cornell. We played a few of the other colleges. We had a very good coach, and I enjoyed the practices because that's when I played the most. I didn't always get in every game. I was not on the first team. I played, but it was enjoyable to be part of here. And we didn't realize what we had at the time, you know, here.
Right.
You just don't realize. And there's this building that Calvin didn't get oriented before. He couldn't tell. It was facing the sun. That was the
chief enlisted man's home, his quarters. I'm trying to look so I get it right. The post sergeant major's quarters.
Okay.
And he was the most prestigious position held by an enlisted man, and that was his home.
I didn't live on campus. I lived at home in Chazy, and I commuted. But I think the building behind that was the hospital we had, or the medical center we had at the time was the one behind it. Is that right? Was it in there too?
That's what it was back in the old days. Also,
Okay.
it was the post hospital.
Because I had my physicals there for the college, I remember.
Yeah. I'm sorry. This building right here was the post hospital.
That's the next one?
Yeah. The building behind the regiment. The regiment quarters was. I saw it there a minute ago.
You know, that's interesting here as I look at this. A footpath across the parade grounds, across to Officers Row, was named for Dr. William Beaumont. Now, Dr. William Beaumont was the person who found out about the digestive system, and formerly was from Champlain, New York, and taught school in Champlain, New York, and was also over in St. Albans, Vermont, where he had a practice. So he was a very, very well-known person. He kept a person alive with a view to his stomach, watching digestive systems.
Now I've got oriented here.
Okay.
The building behind the house right there, that was the stables, and that was built in 1888.
That was the stable,
That was
okay.
the stables. And it was later used as an ice house, and then toward the end, the 380th, our civil engineers operated out of that building right there. And then, of course, that building was the hospital.
That was the hospital. See, I don't recall. I thought it was behind it.
That
Could have
was
been
the
that one, but
post-hospital.
I recall the other one. But
Maybe they sent you to the vet.
they sent me to the vet. Well, I was coming to college a lot because of the help of Dr. Ward Dwight from Chazy, who was a vet, who gave me some employment while I was at school, as well as the Harry Neverett family, Leo Gay from Plattsburgh, whom I sold milking machines for. And without those three people, I'm not sure I'd have made it through college. I had the military paid my tuition, but I needed spending money, gas money, and so forth. And because of those three families, I'm very, very much indebted to those people. Again, Arthur Jarvis and Sam Rice. I also had some contact with them at the old Gulf Station in Chazy. And we're going back to history now. And But I don't forget those people, and I hope people out there don't forget the people who have done good things for you over the years, because they deserve to be remembered. I saw Arthur Jarvis 2 weeks ago, and it was just great seeing him, and you know, I don't see him very often. We've been walking around the oval, probably did over a mile, huh?
Yeah.
And at 12 o'clock was the administration building that we started with. And we went around from 1, and we're right over here to 11 o'clock, 10 to 11 o'clock on the clock. And this is the building where we met Peter this morning. The office is there now.
Yes.
It's only been there a short time.
Yeah, I've been here for a couple of weeks. This is building 426. This was more barracks in the old days, in Plattsburgh barracks days. This was more barracks that housed men. Today, or before the Air Force Base closed, it was another civil engineering offices operated out of here, and family housing. The folks that ran all the base housing operated out of this building. And today it's the PIDC, as you can see the sign right there. And the park
right
folks
there.
are operating out of here. This is pretty much the hub of all operations present day right now with the base.
So the going out and the coming in right here.
Yep.
The development council is stationed here, and this is what will happen to the base will be determined by what the people who are in that building now.
They're the maintainers of the base now.
Has it been turned over to them officially?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So all of the facilities have been turned over just to the PDIC. In other words, PIDC.
Right now, the Air Force Base Conversion Agency is responsible for everything, and they're slowly turning buildings over to the
But
park
at
folks.
one time they were talking about the Indians, you know, wanting a part of it and so forth. That's all out of the window, I guess, huh?
I believe
PIDC is supposed to get it all and then portion it out from there.
Yeah, park folks will
Okay.
they'll set up contracts, and they'll set up lease agreements with whoever wants to utilize these buildings.
We don't know if anybody out there is watching this from out of town. Could very well be visiting in Plattsburgh area. And if you see anything in here you like, well, you talk to someone from the PIDC and give them your ideas. There's a lot of space here, and they're just waiting for people. Not just waiting, they're also going out to find people, but they're waiting for you to come in. If they don't know who you are, contact them. It sure is. You won't have to build any buildings out there because there's plenty already here. And you'll have a good place to go out and eat your lunch at noon. It's a beautiful day. Tipper. I think Calvin has those brick buildings in between the stone buildings in his camera. Those are the buildings that were at 12 and 1 o'clock as we looked at the oval where we started. We were on the right of them, right? That's on the outside the oval. So we've come across to the older part here that's been here for years and years, these stone buildings. And tell us about the stone buildings.
Well, these stone buildings that we're looking at right out in front of us, they are NCO quarters. They're really not that old. These stone buildings were erected in 1939 for senior NCOs. And when we had our base here, we also had field grade officers in them. We didn't have enlisted on this side on the old base. We had all our officers, and those were officers' quarters.
Anybody who's had younger children over the years have probably come in and played Little League Baseball in here against some of the base teams. They played right here, I believe, right?
Probably,
at least
yeah.
Years ago. I came down here, I think, with my son one time in this particular field. And right behind us is the coupe de grace right here.
This is the jewel of Plattsburgh Air Force Base right here. This is the old stone barracks. This is on the National Register. This is building number 425, as we call it, but it's the oldest building on base. It was built of native limestone in 1836. The original plan called for a hollow square, each building being 600 feet long, and surrounded the barracks. There was another building out here of the same architecture,
to our left, right over here?
Same,
Yeah.
built the same time. It was right out here, and that was destroyed in I think a couple fires. But the old stone barracks. President Grant was lived here when he was an Army lieutenant.
Who did?
President U.S. Grant.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yes. Now,
When he was a junior officer, he stayed in these barracks.
this has not been used in a number of years.
It's presently going under renovation to It's got a new roof on it, and most of the woodwork you're viewing out here in the front has all been revamped, redone. But they're presently spending a lot of money to restore this building, get it back in its original condition. In the 50s, when the Air Force had it, there were apartments inside, and there was it was all divided out segmented into little apartments and whatnot, and then they stopped using it, they abandoned it. And now they're trying, the county is trying to get it all preserved, get it all set up, and hopefully house an interpreter center, a museum in here, which would be ideal.
Perfect, yes. I'm not sure if this was used as a dorm when the college was here or not. I know there was activity, and I do have a picture at home of a 300 or 400 pound bear strung up here in one of these doorways on the stairways, one of the three. One of the students shot, but not on the base, but he was hunting. But I don't remember if there was a bear, they used them as dorms or not at the time. Now that says number 625. Does that mean anything? You mentioned 425.
I'm sorry, it's 625.
It is
That's
625?
the building number,
Okay.
625, yeah.
And this is that real old building.
Now, this is the oldest on base, the old stone barracks.
And if you see pictures of the base, many times old postcards, this will be prominent on it.
Most likely, yeah.
As we look over to the left, there was a rec center for teen centers over here, I remember.
A youth center. Yeah.
Yes.
And then we have further down, you probably can't see too well, you'll see the roofs of them. There's more officers' quarters, single-story, two-family homes.
Yeah. Can we drive down through there later? Okay, we will. Okay. Now, what I'd like to see while we're here, because very few ever seen it, would be the old base cemetery. Okay, I think we should see the old base cemetery. As nice as the porch is in front, Peter, this is very impressive back here, looking at these windows.
Yes, it's a beautiful building. This is the rear of the old stone barracks that we're looking at right now. And again, they're in the process of doing a lot of renovations to get this building back into a condition where it's not going to deteriorate any longer.
You would wonder if they were thinking back then of putting it in this direction to get the use of the sun from the south with all the windows to help to heat the building. And it helps a lot in the wintertime.
That was probably the reason for it.
Could very well have been. There's a lot of... Now, apparently there were doors here, too. They must have had back entrances.
Yep.
There's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doors that were here at one time.
In the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of small apartments in this building.
Yeah. There might have been a porch back here, too, at one time.
There might have been. That might have been very similar to the front.
Uh-huh.
We're looking out to our left over here. You see the old post cemetery.
We'll get a little closer to that, just get a close look, because that is in many of the history books. We're in the old cemetery, the military cemetery. You can see where we are. You can see the planes in the entrance to the new base. The hospital building is off to your left. And directly across is this huge marker or stone, the 10 times as big as anything else here. And what can you tell us about the cemetery?
Yeah, this is this monument was put here for the unknown soldiers that were killed, that died in the War of 1812.
And sailors, too.
And sailors.
Right.
And actually, they were killed during the Battle of Plattsburgh.
Or died later of wounds received in the Battle of Plattsburgh. Now, that's 1812.
There are 136 unknown soldiers buried right here. The remains of many of these soldiers were discovered while excavating on and around Plattsburgh Barracks. Also buried here are 136 known soldiers of Medal of Honor recipients, 106 children and wives of the soldiers, for a total of 445 people are buried here. And of course, it's closed for any future burials.
No more burials. We're going to move down under the tree here to get out of that sun as we face Calvin.
This is the post cemetery, and as you can see, it's Route 9 right out.
Right. Very quiet in here, but very, very noisy Route 9 right there. And then the housing is to the south here. You will see more of the... those are also officers' housing.
Those are all junior officer homes.
Junior officers.
Yeah.
Right.
They're single-story, two-family homes.
Come on under the tree here a second, Peter, and let me ask you a couple of questions about your becoming a historian. How long have you been a historian for the Plattsburgh Air Force Base?
Well, for the past 4 years, 91, May of 91, I took over the position. When I originally came here, I was an avionics technician on the FB-111. And when the FB-111s left, I was wanting to stay in the area, and I wanted to get out of the maintenance side of the Air Force, so I decided, let's find an administrative job. And this job was open, and it looked interesting, and so I applied for it.
So when you say it's open, there was someone else had been a historian before?
Oh yeah, every base, it's a very, very small career field. There's only about 126 enlisted historians, and normally each base has a historian. So this position had been vacant for about 6 months.
Okay.
And when I took over, it was a bit of a mess and a bit behind, but
when you did this, did you know it was going to close at that time, or no, not yet, huh?
Actually, a month after I took over, we had our first BRAC visit in 91, and we were looked at along with Loring Air Force Base in Maine, and everyone knows the results of that. We stayed open, and Loring took the bullet.
So what have you done as historian since that time? What have your major, what do you do as a historian?
Well, the biggest job of the wing historian is to write a history, a semi-annual history. Every 6 months I write a history, and this history has everything from renovations, base housing, right up to the flying operation. So it's a snapshot of the entire operations of the base and the wing for a 6-month period, and that's my main job. The other big part of my job is to answer questions. When the phone rings, someone's got a question about anything about the base, I'll research it and hopefully find them an answer.
Did you have anybody working with you?
I had reserve people work for me on and off, but normally it's a one-seat shop.
You did your own typing?
Oh yes.
Computer?
Yes.
Computer, huh?
All my own administrative. I have a little bit of administrative support, but it's mostly done myself.
Do you have many hard items like the first gun ever used here, or the first bayonet that whatever, things like that in any part of on the base anywhere?
Unfortunately not. Again, I'm the Air Force historian.
Okay.
So of course we had the museum of pre-Air Force. There are a lot of artifacts in there, but as far as the first gun and the first no,
nothing. You don't have a thing like that. All right.
No.
So you're not a base historian; it's a wing historian.
It's a wing historian. Again, it's a historian. It's everything. It's the base and the wing.
All right. And now, what's going to happen with what you've gathered? You have certain things here now that aren't going to be left here.
Right.
What's going to happen?
All the wing histories have already been forwarded, and copies have been destroyed. We would have a copy here.
Been destroyed.
Right. The wing histories are classified. The actual wing histories are classified, but our copies have been destroyed here. But there's always a copy at the Air Force Historical Research, the Air Force Research Agency at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. They're a big depository of all the histories for all the bases, all the wings.
But aren't you able to, at least from all of these classified, take some declassified, like Colonel Smith came here a certain date, and Colonel Brown replaced him, and how long he was here, and it's in here.
That's what this is.
Ah, all right.
This is our unclassified, I call it our PR version
of
the wing history. And we produce one of these usually every 2 years. But this has all, well, this is a big chunk of the history of again, the base, Air Force Base, back in its original days of World War II, and also it has the wing. It's a dual history. The front part is the wing, the back part is the base. Okay. Because again, the Air Force wasn't always at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. The 380th Air Refueling Wing, the 380th Bombardment Wing.
Wait, did you help the local TV station to prepare that item they had on the Plattsburgh Air Force Base, the history of the Plattsburgh Air Force Base? That they had on TV. I think it was Channel 57. I hope I'm giving them credit.
I didn't
get involved even. Huh? They should have been talking to you, obviously. But they had a good history. I thought I enjoyed it very much, and able to copy, and I enjoyed that. All right. So what's going to happen? You mentioned you're going to be the second to the last person to leave. Tell us about that.
I'll be the second. Normally the wing historian, the historian is the last. Normally the historian stays for about 90 days after the actual base closes. I was pretty ahead of myself, so I told them, probably a month and a half is enough time for me to finish up my duties here. The actual last person is going to be one of our hospital folks. He has a lot of records to ship out, and he's the last guy. I think he's leaving the middle, about the third week in November. But I'm done here on 9 November.
I remember 9 November. I remember one time when I worked with Customs that we had an expression that came in. I had never seen it before. I looked it up, and that was the penultimate. So you will be the penultimate person, next to last, to leave.
Next to last.
You will be the penultimate.
Normally I'm the gate closer. normally this position's the guy that locks the gate.
Is that right? Okay, now you'll be turning in everything before you leave.
Right.
And no one will replace you here. There'll be nothing.
Not Air Force wide, no.
Okay.
I'm right now presently finishing up the, as I call it, the final chapter of the wing history, and that'll be forwarded to Maxwell, and that'll be it.
And don't forget, if you want something like this, and he prepared them, and you should have something like this. If you're any kind of a buff at all, I hope you're going to automatically give these to the historians in the area,
Yeah.
the town of Champlain, the town of village around this point, all those. I hope you're going to do that.
When I'm gone, if you're looking for any of these, you can contact the Plattsburgh historian, the Clinton County historian, and they'll get all the forward copies.
Okay. Okay.
There's also, I'd like to mention, there's also a wing and a base display down at the Government Center in Plattsburgh that I guess it's going to be on for the next couple months until I think the end of November, and it has a lot of our artifacts from the base, from the wing down there on display. Right as soon as you walk in the doors, if you're going to hang a right to go into motor vehicle, it's
right there.
Right there, those big glass showcases.
We may stop in there and take a peek at that.
Yeah,
If
it's
we
a very
don't today, we
beautiful
will
display.
sooner or later. Okay. All right, we'll leave the cemetery. Very peaceful place and very historic place. And in my back of my mind, I have a picture in my mind of the CCCs, the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was established about I think by President Roosevelt when he came in, and that they had an encampment around here, and they did things, planted a lot of these pine trees you see up and down the roads and things, giving them employment when there was no work. And I thought they had encampments in here at the base, at the barracks. But wouldn't you wonder also over here as you look to the left, were there buildings there at one time, you know?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge, huh? You know, this was the unused portion more. I guess they did their outside, maybe they camped out here for practice and
possibly,
things, you know?
yeah.
All around here.
This the old side of the base was pretty much the administrative side of the Air Force Base.
Okay.
And then of course the new side was the operational, had the runway on it.
When I went to college here, one of the most popular courses was Beach 1 and 2. And we're going to go down there and show you where we held classes for that, just over the hill here. Moving along on our tour, we come to a new bridge. I don't remember ever seeing this, Peter.
No, this bridge was taken out by a train with too high a cargo, I want to say about 2 to 3 years ago. Very early morning hours, the train came by and just took the old wooden bridge right out. So of course they had to erect a new bridge, and they decided to go all metal and make it a bit higher. They changed the road layout a bit because it was such a steep incline. But now this is a fairly new bridge.
Did they, did it disrail the train when they hit it?
No,
it didn't. Huh?
They just took the
Took it right
took the
off.
bridge
It was
right
a
off.
substantial bridge, as I remember.
Yeah, but it was all wood. So.
Uh-huh. So the D&H goes right under here, a single track, and heading down to Cliff Haven from here. And then, as I recall, when I came, I thought we went down this way, but
Well, you
This
still
has
can.
changed.
There's stairs to go down.
so a lot of this has been built up too.
Yes, this has all been built up.
That's what I thought.
It wasn't as steep.
No, not anywhere near this. But there's your landing. Here's a picnic area,
No,
play
it's a picnic area.
area for the children, and the beautiful Lake Champlain. You can go a lot of places, folks, and you aren't going to find a nicer lake than this.
No.
Beautiful
lake.
This isn't Broad Lake. Broad Lake is down below near Willsboro, I believe. Keysville, rather, Port Kent. Not sure where we are directly across here. We're not too far from, I'm not sure what that is directly across.
Well,
That North Arrow?
Directly across should be.
Is that's not
North? Yeah. I
North
think so.
Arrow area, I believe, huh? I think it's the arrows.
Well,
Flying out of here, you do that.
that's a ferry right there, right?
I believe so, yes.
So.
Grand Isle then. No, Grand Isle, the ferry wouldn't be that far.
Oh,
The ferry goes straight across.
right over here. Right?
Yes, that's down further. I don't know what that is, if that's a ferry or not out there.
Cumberland Head should be over there, right?
Yes, Cumberland Head. Yes, now here you can see, here you can see over here. Now is that down at the end of Bridge Street? Yes, that's
Yes.
end of Bridge Street.
Yeah, there's the marina.
The dock, the marina, below the station. Old Plattsburgh Grocery, I believe, is over there to your left.
Brown building. Yeah.
Yep.
Should be.
And it's too bad that whole area does not have a good view of the lake until you get down to where you can see there. In other words, back further where those apartments are, you can't see the lake because of the trees and so forth. But this is always was a very popular place, and this was there was another beach you set up above for the officers, administrators.
Yes, there's another grounds further down that the officers used.
So this is enlisted?
Well, this was pretty much everybody.
Anybody?
Because we had the marina down here where you could moor your boats, and of course you had your beach right down here. But the other was pretty much a small beach and a picnic area for the officers.
Right. This road here goes right on down to where you can load back your boat right into the water, your boat trailer. And there's some more picnic tables and so forth down at this end where the families could come.
There's a hiking trail that you can hike.
There is?
Yeah, down that way.
I would think
right up to the point.
The most dangerous thing here, of course, the playground, you'll notice, is surrounded by fence because of that railroad.
Right.
They've got it completely enclosed so that they won't have to worry about the children too close to the tracks. Very nice here, and you can see the old stone building just off to our left. That's where you're located, not very far. That's the 2. The other one is just off to the left. Right. It's to the left of this tree. Our car is, yeah, the big old barracks is there. What you're looking at on the top of the hill there is Clinton Community College, former Champlain Hotel. The original hotel was built in the late 1800s by the D&H, the Delaware and Hudson Railroad Company built the original hotel, very popular. A lot of prominent people came and stayed there. It burned in 1910, and then they rebuilt in 1911 and 12, and then it to its present, what you see today, and then continued as a hotel until I think the Bellarmine took it over, the Jesuit order took it over, and then later on it was purchased by the county, and now is our community college. You agree with all that, Peter?
I believe so.
All right.
You have that history down much better than I do.
Okay, now just beyond there, I'm going to do some speculating. We don't know for sure what Valcour Island looks like from this area, but we think it's that little point off to the left where there's a break, and that's at the Valcour Conference Center, owned by the State University, and they have meetings out there, and that's where the famous battle of 1776 with Benedict Arnold. You got something in your article about that?
Yes, I sure do. Okay, in 1776, Benedict Arnold, aboard the Royal Savage, commanded an American fleet that fought the British just 4 miles south of the present location of our base, near Valcour Island. Though defeated in an anticlimactic battle, the Americans led the British fleet enough to stall their advance, and that was seen as the turning point of the war. That this young American nation time to build a larger fleet and a stronger defenses. After termination of the Revolutionary War, there was no military activity at Plattsburgh for over 30 years.
Okay, that's Valcour. Now the closer island, the bigger one here apparently, is Crab Island.
Bigger in our view.
In our view, it's bigger.
Yes.
And apparently this became very prominent when the man Roger Jacobowski decided to purchase it and was going to do something with it, and all of a sudden the state said, hey, you can't do that. It's been there for years. No one wanted it, but when he wanted it, they got it back under eminent domain, and they paid back his money. He may have made a little profit, but there's about 118 or 120 military buried out there, I think some American as well as British, that were on that island, and the only way to get to it is by boat, obviously, but there is a tower there, I believe.
Now there's a lighthouse.
A lighthouse.
Yeah. And the county, I guess, is currently renovating that lighthouse.
The Historical Society, I think, was going to take a trip out there this fall sometime, as I recall. All right, so what we're looking at, that is Broad Lake. Well, not quite Broad. Broad is down below the islands. And as you look up here, you can see, I think that's all Vermont out there. And we're looking at way out. And then you can't see Cumberland Head from here. It's around this point to our left. We don't see very beautiful colors here today, on our shore anyway. They're kind of darkened out. A lot have fallen the last week. And we're very pleased to be here at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. would have had trouble doing this probably a month ago or a year ago, getting on like this. But now we're here, and we don't know what that rock pile is over there that goes straight up. Looks like something's been formed there.
No, I'm not real sure of that. What looks like some kind of slide.
It does, yeah. Maybe they slide there in the winter. There's no trees in that area. It was a road there for something. All right, maybe for the amphibians if they take over the base.
There's the officer beach down there with the little pavilion.
Okay, you can see it. Yeah, you see that
little building?
Building to the left there, that little one?
Yep.
The officers' beach, just behind the tennis courts at that near the chapel.
Yep. The base has a lot of lakeshore. The base owns or owned.
Only at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base are Nevada and New Hampshire so close together. But it's the Nevada Oval and New Hampshire Street. Here we're still in the old base, but we're at the south end where the housing was. Tell us a little bit more about what I'm trying to say.
This is a housing area for officer housing, and they're basically two-family units, single-story 2-family units. And it's pretty much just like a little community, a little development. They all have their own garages. The unique part about the old base is that all the buildings have individual furnaces, individual heating systems. Whereas when we go over to the new base, you'll see that we have one big central heat plant on the new base, and there's hot water is piped in underground and above ground to all the housing units, all the buildings. Period. But
yes.
This is totally unoccupied now.
Yep. You see, this is a regular community, curbs. You got the curbs, and you got your all the drainage. Everything is here. It's a community, and Calvin was just asking, coming in, and we're talking speculation now. But what if I or he decided we want to move to Plattsburgh and would like to buy this house right here? You know, clear out the front and look out at the lake. Sure. Would it be possible, as far as you know?
I don't believe so. I don't think there's any plans for any of that now. I don't know what they're going to do with these homes. Whether, I had heard some rumors that they're going to bulldoze a lot of them down, and it's again, it's who will utilize them, who'd use them.
You got a month to go, so you can't say it, but I can. That's what military does sometimes, and they can really just bulldoze the money down rather than to keep it up or fix it up. These will go to pot very quickly.
Sure.
These are not the construction that you around the oval. They're well constructed, but they're inside is sheetrock, probably regular plywood floors with rugs, probably.
Yeah.
And there's no basements. But you see, it was very nice living if you were going to be in the military. Not only did you have the nice area of Clinton County, Plattsburgh to live in, but you had decent housing right here and on the lake. Look at that, on the lake.
Yeah, right on the lake.
Did they have to cut their own grass?
Oh yes. Yep.
Oh, you have to cut your own grass. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you were responsible, and the housing office sent around people to check and make sure the grass didn't exceed 2 inches. If it exceeded 2 inches, you got a warning letter. But yeah, you had to care for your own grounds, your own responsibilities.
Now I'm a little confused here. Let me just go back. Sure. This unit right here with that gray garage, 952, is only one unit?
That's one.
And there's one on the other side. So they're not attached together
No,
here?
they're not.
All right.
There's some one family units here, and then there are some 2-family units out in the...
So you shared a driveway, but you each had your own garage on each side?
That's the only thing you shared was the driveway.
And you had a big lawn?
You had a nice yard and 3 to 4 bedrooms, 2 baths.
All right, let's talk a little bit here, just while we're right here, about housing. You're an enlisted man. We'll talk about enlisted on the other side. But these officers, did they get an allowance? Did they pay rent? Because some lived on base, some lived off base.
Right. I can't speak too much for the officer because I don't know how they were paid. But enlisted, we got an allowance to live off base. If we lived on base, we had free housing, free electric, free hot water. The only thing we paid for was our telephone and our cable vision. And then if you lived off base, you got an allowance to live off base. My rank, depending on your rent or your mortgage, you got about between $400 and $450 a month extra in your pay just for your housing allowance. And then you received an allowance for your food.
And if you ate here, you paid for your food?
Well, if you ate in a if you ate in the mess hall, you would pay for your food. Yes,
Okay.
because you were allotted. Those that lived on base, the single guys that lived on base, they had meal cards,
All right.
and they would show that meal card to the cashier, and they would get their meals for free.
Now, you have one child, you said one on the way.
One child, one on the way.
If you had 6 children and you had needed a bigger place off base, would it give you more money?
No, your entitlements went by your rank, and either you were single or married. You did not get more entitlements for more children. Or more
So
dependents.
you're saying that a sergeant, staff sergeant, was able to live better off base than a private who was married. Both being married, one child, you'd get more money for allowance.
You'd get more money the more rank. Not a lot of money, but
No,
you know,
just a little
few
bit more,
dollars.
and you got more money for pay, right?
Right.
But you're in every cent of it.
Right.
You bet.
Absolutely.
We're going to head back out and stop at the main gate and kind of close this show off, and then before we go into the new base, and we'll talk about what they did at that gate when many of you people came in, find out what they were doing, what shifts they had, and just what happened at a gate like that. You know all that?
I think I do.
You sure do. We're going to be showing you what you usually see when you come to the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. You entered right here. You saw this little building and you stopped and told them your business, and if they thought it was good, they let you on. Correct?
Right.
Now, who was maintaining this building?
Well, our security police. There'd be a gate here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Up until the middle of September, this little shed, this little gatehouse was manned. After middle of September, they decided that they take the security off this side of the base. The other side of the base, the new side, still has 24-hour security on it. Of course, it's a company that's a Plattsburgh company now. It's not a military person waving you on.
Now, when this security group were the same group that patrolled the roads
Yep.
too at that time?
Yep, the security.
But they were
the
military.
Military,
They were
military police.
Yes. I see. We were here, and they had the security was here talking to someone, and it was Bob St. John from Rouse's Point, one of the village police there, or at least used to be. I beg your pardon, Bob. Used to be, and he's here at security here. So these people would work 8 hours here, or 4 off, 4 on. How did they do that?
Well, the security police normally they'd work 12-hour shifts, but it'd be like 4 on, 4 out patrol, and they'd vary. You wouldn't sit there for 12 hours.
Okay, I would come in and they would say, "Hey, the guy ahead of me just go right on by." Now, how did they know that he could go by and I couldn't?
Right. On your vehicle, in the old days it used to be on the bumper. In the new days it was up on the windshield. There'd be your base sticker, and that base sticker would say Plattsburgh Air Force Base. There'd be a number, and then there'd be a small label, a colored label, and that colored label, believe it or not, designated your rank.
Oh, they saluted you or not? Huh?
That's it. That's how they knew to salute or not to salute. It's because
Okay.
that color label. There was a junior enlisted, senior enlisted, and then same thing, junior officer, senior officer.
Okay, but how did they know that I owned the car? In other words, if I had your car, I could come in.
You certainly could.
Right, 'cause it was
Unless
a
they were
car.
doing some random checks where they'd ask for military
Uh-huh.
ID.
Because I remember one time I came in, I had bought a blue Air Force raincoat at a garage sale. Great coat. And I came in, and when I came in, instead of stopping me, they just said, "Go right ahead." They saw my coat and let me go in because of my coat. And one of them saluted me. It must have been an officer's that didn't have anything on it. Were they different, the 2 raincoats?
No, usually your
I don't know why, but I was at
your
the
rank designation.
and I used to go in. I couldn't buy anything, but I used to go to not the commissary, but the
X.
yes. I'd go in. And I could walk around.
Yeah.
I couldn't buy anything
Yeah,
because they thought I was an officer.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, military, because of the recognize the thing.
Right.
That's not why I wore. I didn't realize it until I went in one time, and they said, "Come on right in."
Yeah.
So, all right. So this closed the middle of September, you say?
This gatehouse closed the middle. It wasn't manned any longer at the middle of September.
Uh-huh. So you never worked at this at all? There was nothing
No.
regular. How many security people did they have? Any idea how big of a unit?
This wing I think usually averaged about 50 to 60.
Is that a good
Security
duty?
police. I guess if you want to be a cop, yeah. I guess it would be.
All right.
I personally, I don't think I could do it, but
Okay.
yeah, it's basically a military police officer.
Okay, this is where you notice the big change right at the beginning. Nobody here. The first thing we noticed this morning, nobody here. That's different. It hasn't been like that in 40 years. Correct? 40 years. Remember that. We sometimes forget. 1955, I believe. Huh? And before we leave, I wish we had that. Did you get that history you've got in the car, please?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a break here. We'll be right back. I want to talk about the college. This is my baby here. Not wanting to see the property and facilities at the Plattsburgh Barracks go unused, a bill was introduced into Congress February 1946 to convert the barracks into a GI university under the jurisdiction of the New York State Department of Education. Following negotiations between the federal and the New York governments, reconversion of the facilities was started in July 46, and Plattsburgh Barracks housed Champlain College of Plattsburgh starting in August. 1 month. I went into service the last day of June 1946 after I graduated. The Associated Colleges of Upper New York was established as a 2-year institute for the education of veterans of World War II. The Associated Colleges represented Colgate University, Cornell, Clarkson, a whole bunch of them here. College sites were at Sampson, U.S. Naval Training Center, Plattsburgh Barracks, the Rhodes Hospital at Utica, 3 of them. Champlain College of Plattsburgh, operating as one of the Associated Colleges, had a temporary 3-year charter granted by the State Board of Regents, and when it expired in August of 49, they renewed for 1 year. In the summer of 1950, I graduated from the Associate College and went out to Denver to go to the University of Denver. But because the Korean War broke out, I figured I might be called back into service. I had a better chance to finish my college if I came back to Plattsburgh. In the meantime, I knew they were making it a 4-year college. It became part of the state university system in 1950. In 1946, when the federal government transferred the property to the state of New York, it was with a stipulation that the federal government could recapture it anytime during the initial 10 years for national defense purposes. When the college opened, it boasted an enrollment of 1,007 students. Because enrollment had dropped from a high of 2,800 in 1947 to less than 800 in 1951, the state of New York was agreeable to returning the property to the federal government, and the Department of the Air Force announced plans to establish a base on the former military reservation. At the time, they were talking about another place, Peter. They were talking about Point of Rush as a place for the base, or in the city of Plattsburgh. And there were 2 factions that were involved in the two. They were going to take farmland out there, but they finally ended up here. And I believe the last graduating class was either in the spring of 55 or June of 54. I'm not really sure. But there were only, I graduated February 1952, the first 4-year class. Got my diploma in June of 52. Got my first job 2 days later. It prepared well for me. It did the job for me. It was inexpensive for me. My tuition was paid, and I have very close heartaches when I come here, because now that it's back the way it was when I was at college, really, except that the buildings are closed. Yeah. That's it, I guess, for this morning's portion, and we've been talking with Peter Garnett right here. He is a staff sergeant for another month at least at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base, the base historian. Picture was in the paper, a nice big article on page 3 about 2 weeks ago. Huh?
Right after the base closed.
Get a lot of comments about that article?
Yes, I got a lot of phone calls also, and you were one of them.
Right. Well, this guy called you. All right. Now, before we close, you're going to Shazy. Your wife's got a hairdresser. Answers Computer. What's that all about?
That's a computer business that I've had for 4.5 years. I sell computers, I service them, education, setup, installation, the whole 9 yards. Everything, all your computing needs.
So you're active right now into it?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Huh? So that how big of a operation can you handle, and how small do you take?
Well, small right to home use of, just regular home computers, home PCs. As far as commercial, there's no limit. We just finished setting up the Barber Gas and Grocery in Shazy with a system, with a networking system, with scanner and the whole 9 yards for a convenience store operation. But oh God, I'm trying to think. The county have my systems.
The county has
the county. I've sold quite a few systems to the county. I'm trying to think of all the different companies. Time Saver Software in Plattsburgh. The Eris Labor Union has our systems. A lot of different companies. We sell to a lot of companies.
And watch for maybe an ad on Hometown Cable soon from this man. But if you're looking for someone with your computer, one of the guys who has a good smile on his face most of the time, there it is right there, Peter.
Thank you.
We'll be back next Sunday with more things here at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. We're going to go look at those planes, hospital, right on down through the flight line.